Good morning. I'm Theresa Skorseth. This is a famous Robin Hensel, and we're here with Can We Talk? Robin, you've got a lot of topics on in your stack today. What do you want to start with?
Well, I would like to talk about a lot of local things to begin with, and one of them is the commentary thread that came through on the Morrison County Records article titled "Zoo Asks Council to Make Exception for Fundraising and Overnight Camping." And what this has to do with this article is that I basically stated to the council that if they're going to continue to discriminatorily enforce their laws and the things that they get a choice to pick how they're going to act, their actions and the things that they do, that if they're unfair, that if they're discriminatory, if they're treating me or anybody else different, I'm going to be the first one to speak up and out about it.
Right.
Okay, so people can look up this article online if they like. The comments are all posted that I'm going to read. What's troubling about this are some of the comments that a person by the name of Fed Up, that's their fake name, they're not brave enough to come out and use their real name, they have to hide behind a surname when they post. And there are a number of them on here, and in my opinion, they're cowards hiding behind their surname, but that's just my opinion. There's a person by the name of T-Mac, T-M-A-C, that's one of the commenters. In fact, I'll start with something that he wrote, T-M-A-C.
Okay.
And they don't list their real name whatsoever, they just go by these surnames. So T-Mac writes...
I think you mean pseudonym.
Or pseudonym, yeah, excuse me.
That's all right.
T-Mac writes, you don't need to treat every single person absolutely in an identical fashion. You simply need to have a common sense basis for what you're doing. Now that was a quote that our city attorney made when they were discussing whether or not they were going to allow the zoo to have illegal, under our parks regulations, a law in this town, illegal overnight camping.
Right.
But they clearly denied our group the right to camp at Laubergy Park in 2012. It's on record. I have the letter stating that we couldn't do it.
Because there was a law against it.
Right, but now they're going to make an exception and let this group over here have illegal off-premise camping because they like that group. Okay. So he continues on, yes, let's use some common sense and not be bullied into a decision. A fundraiser for a city zoo in an enclosed environment is not a stag party in a wide open city park. So he's correlating our event, a peace event, which involved mostly senior people. One of the ladies that wanted to stay at Laubergy Park was a 76-year-old friend of mine who was suffering. She's now in her stage 4 of cancer of her life. She wanted to bring her motorhome here so she could comfortably get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee. We were starting our march from that area and going to come downtown.
Right.
And another group was Colleen Rowley, former FBI whistleblower. She was bringing Polly Mann, the founder of Women Against Military Madness, and some of those wonderful ladies and gentlemen from that group wanted to possibly come up and stay overnight at Laubergy. So we're not talking about riffraff folks. We're talking about really decent, law-abiding citizens. Now Rick Witt, he does write, well, we're assuming this is his real name, writes, amazing how Miss Hensel can cite a law, but yet overlook a word not to her liking or putting her complaint to rest. Interesting how those simple words or authorized seem to escape her notice. Then Fed Up writes, this should be a simple decision for the council. This event would benefit the community greatly. The zoo is one of the few attractions to bring people to Little Falls and for our community members to utilize. When it comes down to creative ideas to fundraise, some things should be a no-brainer. A peace and diversity fair does not benefit the community and therefore should be denied special requests. You have the power to authorize this, so I truly hope you make the right decision. No need to walk on eggshells because one person shouting off threats of another lawsuit. Let her whine all she wants. The community needs your support. Then I wrote in response to that, Fed Up, again, you're dead wrong. What this closed community, ethos community most needs is the Central Minnesota Peace and Diversity Fair. This was an event now in its 4th year that bridged the divide between, this is me talking now, bridged the races and encouraged racial harmony. It also promoted education about the benefits of peace. Much was shared about misinformation from the media and our government. Colleen Rowley, former head of the Minneapolis FBI and whistleblower, spoke about 9/11 and what led up to the illegal Iraq invasion and more. A West Point grad, former Army captain, spoke against war and abuses of the military. Too bad you and others don't understand its relevance. Shame on you for suggesting discrimination is okay for our lawless council. No wonder the city has continuing legal battles. Then Fed Up writes in response to that comment, sorry, but the last time I checked, race was not an issue in Little Falls.
Well, oh my goodness.
There's no need for an event to promote racial harmony. We do that already on our own.
Oh my gosh.
And you can stop pulling the poor me discrimination card anytime now. People are beyond tired of hearing from you, or hearing it from you. Some people get denied. Deal with it. Then I wrote, Fed Up, as far as I know, in my records checking, my event titled Central Minnesota Peace and Diversity Fair of June 2012, June 22nd, 2012, was the only group ever denied in a city park to camp overnight at a park, ever. If you can prove me wrong, I'll be astonished. This is exactly why it was part of my lawsuit for a period of time. What you're saying is some people get denied, deal with it, is to agree outright with discrimination, which happens to be against the law. So why is it that you are not a believer in our justice system? A true believer would never say that certain groups can be denied. I believe you are prejudiced in favor of the lawless council. You seem to back them up in their illegal activities or suggestions. This is a problem. If the city continues to violate anybody's rights, you and everyone else can be assured I will be at the forefront of the fight against it. If they can deny me, they can deny anyone. Think about it. Then Fed Up wrote, yeah, you are not special. They can deny anyone. Exactly the point. And I wrote, Fed Up, please inform us, how is racial harmony promoted in Little Falls and by whom? And he writes back, we already have racial harmony, therefore there's no point to promote it. And I wrote, Fed Up, you are incorrect about racial harmony. There is a great deal of prejudice within the school system and the community. You are not aware, as you do not likely have family or friends that are of a minority race. I have a family and friends that are of different racial groups and know full well from my entire 20 years in this community that there is not a closed ethos, but that there not only is a closed ethos, but racial prejudice is rampant. Earlier you stated that the community was already promoting racial harmony, and now you're backtracking. I will hold you to my earlier question, how is racial harmony promoted in Little Falls and by whom? And Fed Up writes, yes, because Robin Hensel is the only one who has friends or relatives of different races or cultures. I forgot, you're special. Shame on all of us for thinking that we may have that too. Come on, really? You are the one that is highly educated and misinformed. Guess what? All lives matter. So he's bringing up this, in defense of the Black Lives Matter, he's saying all lives matter. Yeah,
Which
but
of
not
course
all
is
lives
true,
are being
but not-
mowed down on the street.
Exactly. Not all lives are being treated equally. This whole issue about there's no problem of racial inequality in Little Falls is such the words fail me.
Well, we know.
It's so amazing to me because we've seen it happen. We've seen kids, people who pay attention have seen kids in school being mistreated. My daughters are biracial. When they went to school, people would follow them down the hallway, and as they passed, they would whisper, nigger.
Yeah. My kids were called that too, repeatedly in this town.
Yeah.
On the ice skating rinks, when they were out with their skateboards or whatever, my youngest daughter was called the N-word the last year that she went to school here by some kid that was wearing a cowboy hat, looked like he was kicking, with his boots.
So the thing
it's
is
astonishing how much racial prejudice there is here, and I am terribly concerned after looking at the data that I received from the police department that there is rampant racial profiling going on in our city.
And the thing is that everyone actually is special. Fed Up is just adamant that you don't have the right to think of yourself as special. But we all come from different circumstances. We all have different experiences. And we all have the right to have those experiences acknowledged. including you, fed up, and anyone else who finds the things that Robin has to say offensive or hard to swallow. She is the mother of children of color. I'm the mother of children of color. We have long-term friendships with people who are not in the mainstream and are not the fantasy citizens of Little Falls that very many people think are somehow out there. We were talking earlier about Little Falls and how people think that somebody said that Robin is ruining Little Falls. And my argument is, she's not ruining Little Falls, she's ruining your fantasy of Little Falls. She's tearing down piece by piece your idea that this community is something from a 1950s TV show. It's Pleasantville. And there are many lovely things about Little Falls. I live here by choice. I like this town. But I'm not fooled into thinking that it is some sort of utopia. It is not. Things have gone wrong and need to be addressed. And Robin is one of the very few people who's got the courage to address those things. I think we need to respect that and respect everyone's opinion, respect all lives because all lives do matter, but not be fooled into thinking that there are no differences in the way that some people are treated based on any number of differences, right, including color.
Well, it's interesting that I hosted this event in 2012, and what has happened in our society since then, with the gunning down by police forces all over this country of, frankly, innocent people that weren't carrying weapons. Tamir Rice was holding a fake gun, and at least one former law enforcement officer that I know has stated that he's never seen such poor policing. You don't drive up to somebody with the Michael Brown affair. You don't drive up to somebody and stay in your squad car. That flies in the face of any good law enforcement training.
Or even good self-defense. You're in a vulnerable position if you're the one sitting inside a car and someone else is standing at the window. If
ever our community needed racial bridging and racial harmony, and some kind of mechanism, some kind of pulling together of people of all different races to create that harmony with good food and good music, speakers and so on. It was, which was earlier than 2012.
Oh,
that's
yes.
the soonest I could pull it together.
Right.
But this community definitely needs to have that.
It needs to have the opportunity to see it as part of our community involvement. It's not the only thing Little Falls is about. It may not even be the very most important thing that Little Falls is about right now. I feel as if it is, but I could be wrong. That's what diversity is about. It's about taking a single little one-dimensional picture of a town like Little Falls and saying, okay, that's pretty, let's set this over here and let's look at what's actually happening in the big community, in the broader picture. And let's find a way to address whatever wrongs we may find, but especially to make sure that everyone feels they have a voice.
Right, and look what's happening now with, what if we found out about the military, the police force in Ferguson, which happens to be a town of just shy of 22,000 and, almost, not quite, a little bit more than twice as big as Little Falls. We're finding that there's rampant discrimination, even though the chief of police there denied there was any kind of racial profiling or discrimination going on. They found proof of that.
Yes. The
government officials and federal and state and even local officials aren't going to admit guilt. It has to be dug out. Whistleblowers have to come forward, and that has to be ferreted out because that information is there. And time and time again, we find people lying all the time.
Yes, because who's going to step up and say, yes, I discriminate?
Right.
Yes, I make sure that I target people of color and poor people and people who are marginalized in society.
Right.
Everybody's going to say, oh no, I'm not one of those people.
Now, along those lines, and you have a letter there that something that Herb Davis, our esteemed peace activist friend and law enforcement instructor, who joined us at our last filming here, he posted that on Facebook this morning, and it's very well written. But before we get to that, as long as we're on this local stuff, I want to talk about a gal by the name of Cary Blechinger.
Yes.
Blechinger. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right or not, but it's Blechinger. Wrote me a letter that was dated June 11th of 2013. And the reason that this has come up now again is because I posted this letter a while back on my blog. And I'm gonna let Theresa read the letter. And then I'm going to read you her response that she posted, and I did publish her comments now. I just found them the other day, so I published them on my blog. I'll read those when you're done reading this letter. That came in the United States mail with my name on it. She signs it with her writing, and so it was addressed to me. I have a right to publish that letter.
This is from June 11th, 2013, so it's a couple of years old, or a year and a half. Dear Robin, I want to, first of all, thank you. Thank you for making a mockery of yourself. Thank you for ruining any chance that my children will want to stay in this town and create a better place to live. Thank you for costing the city over $45,000 in which they could have used to make improvements to many, many things. You have single-handedly ruined this city's appeal by making it the laughingstock of many things. Thank you. Sorry, I added the attitude because she capped it and put an exclamation point. I am a 40 single mother of 4 children. I expect she means 40 years old. I work very hard to support my children. I have 2 jobs and maintain a good lifestyle for my children and myself. But when I look at you, all I see is a woman trying to destroy everything anyone works for in this town. Why can't you just let this go? What are you trying to prove? Seriously, I think you need to have some sort of psychiatric evaluation if you think what you're doing is right. I have sat back and watched this for long enough and feel now I need to express my thoughts to you. I don't think that I need to write a letter to the editor or put your face in our paper any longer, because that is what you want. You want to be a pinnacle of our community. She put that in quotes. I've never actually heard that phrase used, but apparently she has. But you are going about it in the wrong way. Instead, you are a laughingstock. At first, I was frustrated because of the support our troops sign, as I have family members that are fighting for our country, and those rights they are fighting for are exploiting by you for personal gain. If your story was mentioned to them, I think they would be appalled. Then it expanded to other signs. Now it is just ridiculous. Do you just not care? Do you think that what you are doing has any sort of purpose? Think again, you are destroying a community single-handedly. The famous Robin Hensel, the most powerful person in Little Falls. Wake up, woman, do the right thing and just step back and let our city be. I didn't work this hard in my life to see you ruin it all. Signed, Cary Blechinger or Blechinger or Blechinger, or I'm sorry, Cary, I don't mean to mangle your name. A very concerned, frustrated, lifelong citizen who thinks you are ruining her community.
Now, perhaps we should invite her to come on this show.
I would love to talk to her face to face.
Because she had plenty to say in that letter. And
Right.
she even had the courage to sign her own name to it.
Yes.
So, Cary, if you're watching or if one of your friends are watching, please consider this your personal invitation from myself and from Theresa to come on and discuss face to face with us exactly how you think I'm ruining the city. Because I'd be really curious to know. You seem to have the mindset of a lot of other people here that thinks I'm somehow single-handedly dead set on taking down this city, and that is not at all what I have been ever trying to do.
Yeah.
Then, okay, on my blog, people can make comments, but I'm the moderator of the comments, and I get to decide which I publish. And I have stated that I will not publish any anonymous letters, or if they make up some kind of fake name, if they don't have the courage to come out and say associate their real name with their post, I'm not going to publish anything anybody says. That's the least they can do. When you give your public forum down at City Hall, you are required to give your full name and address. You can't make up some kind of turkey name. And I suppose you could, but they aren't going to buy it. You have to give your real name and your address in order to speak.
Right.
Well, I deserve that much respect as well. She writes, and I just found this morning. She's written a bunch of posts, and I published 2 of them. This is the first one I published. It says, "Please take down this post. It's sharing my private information. I do not wish for my address and personal information to be posted on the internet." Well, her address isn't on there. She didn't sign it on the letter.
And all we know about her personally is that she's apparently 40 years old, a single mother, and has 4 children and works hard.
Right. I mean, this is a personal letter to me.
Yeah.
You know, she's really bashed me in this letter. I think it's important for the community members to hear what certain people are saying about me. I'm all about publicity, telling people what's going on out there.
Right.
The second post she put up, and I published this as well, I will request this for the last time. Take my personal address off this website, or I will seek legal counsel. It's an invasion of my privacy for you to post this to the internet or anywhere else. And I can't remember, maybe she did have her real address on the letter, but she sent it in the public mail. The postman saw the letter. I mean,
Right.
you know, don't send me things, folks, if you don't want me to expose what's going on. Don't say things to me that you don't want repeated, because if they're important enough to state to me, I may want to let others know those things. So just a little heads up there.
Yes.
And,
And if you want a dialogue, I mean, some people just want to rant for a few minutes. That's understandable.
Right.
It's human nature. But if you want to have a dialogue, then you have to be prepared to hear people's reaction to what you have to say.
right, well, she clearly just wanted to rant there.
I think she perhaps did, yes.
And now maybe it's a good time for you to share what her wrote there.
Yes.
And I'll take her letter and
Alrighty,
we'll
here
go
you
on
are.
from there.
This is a letter from Herb Davis, our guest of a few programs back, few shows back, and he writes, while the United States has suffered the worst recession in living memory, I find that I have very few financial concerns. Many of my friends are in the same position. Most of us attended private schools and good universities, and we will be able to provide these same opportunities to our own children. No one in my immediate circle has a family member serving in Afghanistan or Iraq. In fact, in the aftermath of September 11th, 2001, the only sacrifice we were asked to make for our beloved country was to go shopping. Nearly a decade has passed, with our nation's influence and infrastructure crumbling by the hour, and yet those of us who have been so fortunate as to actually live the American dream rather than merely dream it have been spared every inconvenience. Now we are told that we will soon receive a large tax cut for all our troubles. What is the word for the feeling this provokes in me? Imagine being safely seated in a lifeboat while countless others drown, only to hear that another lifeboat has been secured to take your luggage to the shore. Most Americans believe that a person should enjoy the full fruits of his or her labors, however abundant. In this light, taxation tends to be seen as an intrinsic evil. It is worth noting, however, that throughout the 1950s, a decade for which American conservatives pretend to feel a harrowing sense of nostalgia, the marginal tax rate for the wealthy was over 90%. In 1982, however, it has come down by half. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a line here. In fact, prior to the 1980s, it never dipped below 70%. However, since 1982, it has come down by half. In the meantime, the average net worth of the richest 1% of Americans has doubled to $18.5 million, while that of the poorest 40% has fallen by 63% to $2,200. 30 years ago, top U.S. executives made about 50 times the salary of the average employees. In 2007, the average worker would have had to toil for 1,100 years to earn what his CEO brought home between Christmas in Aspen and Christmas at St. Bart's. We now live in a country in which the bottom 40%, about 120 million people, owns just 0.3% of the wealth. Data of this kind make one feel that one is participating in a vast psychological experiment. Just how much inequality can free people endure? Have you seen Ralph Lauren's car collection? Yes, it is beautiful. It also cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So what, many people say, it's his money, he earned it, he should be able to do whatever he wants with it. In conservative circles, expressing any doubt on this point has long been synonymous with Marxism. And yet over 1 million American children are now homeless. People on Medicare are being denied life-saving organ transplants that were routinely covered before the recession. Over 1/4 of our nation's bridges are structurally deficient. When might be a convenient time to ask the richest Americans to help solve problems of this kind? How about now?
All right, to continue on, I just saved this because I think it's important for people to know, and I post a lot of this stuff on my blog as well. And my blog is We have that little
There it
slip.
is.
Teresa, maybe you want to hold that up?
I'll hold it up and see if we can, there we go.
robinhensel.blogspot.com. Check it out sometime, because I post an awful lot of interesting stuff on there. And it's one way that I can continue to exercise my free speech in this town without getting arrested or the threat of arrest. So this is a comment that was posted, I'm not sure which article, but it's one of the articles on the Morrison County Record. It may have had something to do with Randy Berkman's issue around the time of the Christmas, the holiday decorations. I believe the Morrison County Record had a piece about that.
Right.
And I wrote this post and it was removed. It's not pending, it's removed. The Morrison County Record moderator, who's usually Terry Lerke, decided to take this one down. I wrote, why don't you ask those questions of your council members who created the ultra-restrictive sign ordinance? There evidently cannot legally be exceptions like a holiday clause that allows for just those kind of signs. Like the zoning administrator admitted, that was unconstitutional. So he admitted that on July 2nd, 2012, City of Little Falls enacted an unconstitutional sign ordinance. The holiday exception and scrolling interior residential signs were banned as part of the amendments to the ordinance enacted in September. This city would be far better off without any sign ordinance. The expense to enforce it uniformly will cost us all immensely. Is it worth it just to prohibit a message that's unpopular? Now, I just thought of something that I want to share here, and that is that yesterday I spoke with Carol, one of the employees at the City of Royalton's front desk, and the big billboard, the digital billboard that is 200 and some feet from a residence in Royalton on the main drag on Highway 10, the billboard sits on the property of the man that owns Treasure City. And it's an illegal off-premise sign. It's always been an illegal off-premise sign because it's in a residential neighborhood. But then the fact that they digitalized it and had these bright, glaring, flashing signs coming into this guy's bedroom window was enough to perturb him, enough to hire an attorney. The fellow's name that lives in that house is Mark Shrout. And when I drove to St. Cloud a couple days ago, the sign is dark. And so I wanted kind of an update from the City of Royalton, and Carol from there told me that she doesn't know how the light came off, but it's now darkened. And they are the City of Royalton is in mediation out of court, with the Supreme Sign Company's attorney, who is now Tom Thielen, trying to figure out going forward what they're going to do, how they're going to negotiate this mess. My hope is that the City of Royalton has the courage to enforce their sign ordinance fairly, and it looks to me like the city is owed $1,000 a day in violation fees from Supreme Sign Company, and if that were to have gone on for, say, 2-month period, which isn't unrealistic, I think it has been that long, if not longer, they would owe in excess of $60,000 back to the City of Royalton. And I hope that it gets enacted fairly. And I reminded her, as I drive by and through Royalton, I always see illegal signs posted attached to stop signs and directional signs on the highway and on light poles. None of that's legal. And unless my reading is incorrect, I think it's the City Council in Royalton who is charged with enforcing that sign ordinance. And so somebody better get doing it right, or somebody else comes up and says, hey, we have a legitimate beef here, you're not enforcing it for these people, but you are for us, there's another lawsuit waiting to happen. So they would be wise to enforce their ordinance correctly and uniformly.
Right.
Now, I want to let the viewers know that I made a data request on October 6th of 2014, and I didn't receive this information until months later. I think it took like 5 months for me to get the information. What I was seeking was any written complaints that people had made about law enforcement officers in this town. It says on the data request, 12 complaints were received against various officers. Complaints were investigated, no disciplinary action was taken. 2 complaints received and investigated resulted in disciplinary action. Copies are attached, and that's what I'm going to read now.
Okay.
I think it took like 5 months to get this information.
Yeah, it always does. The more sensitive the information, the longer it takes to get it.
Right. So the first is a police complaint. It's addressed to Chief Greg Schermers from Kyle Johnson, police captain. It's dated September 19th, 2014. RE, finding of fact related to the July 28th, 2014 allegation of misconduct on Officer Hirung, that's Officer Rick Hirung, who is still employed with the Little Falls Police Department. On August 5th, 2014, a formal complaint of misconduct was received with, and it's blackened out as the complainant. The allegation of misconduct came from a citizen on July 29th, 2014, alleging excessive speed in a patrol car. Blank made an initial determination that a formal investigation be conducted. Blank was assigned to complete the investigation. On 9/19/14, I received blank report regarding his investigation into the complaint. After reviewing blank report, the allegation of misconduct regarding Officer Hirung is sustained. Findings of fact. On July 2nd, 2014, Chief Greg Schermers issued an internal memorandum regarding police cars traveling at high rates of speed while responding to calls. Specifically, he advised that he received a call from a resident on 1st Street Northeast. The resident reported to Chief Schermers that recently he estimated a police car traveling in excess of 90 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour residential area.
Oh my goodness.
In the memorandum, Chief Schermers made it clear that the high rate of speed is too fast. That internal memorandum was posted on the department's homepage, and it was also emailed to all officers. Officers are responsible for reading departmental emails as well as keeping up with the memos and other items of business posted on the homepage. The memo was issued on July 2nd, 2014, and the incident occurred on July 28th, 2014, giving Officer Hirung opportunity to review the memo. Blank reported that after looking at the squad car video of the incident, he observed that Officer Hirung reached a speed of 93 miles an hour on 1st Street Northeast at 6th Avenue, not far from where you live.
Yeah.
While
And
Officer
Boston
Hirung had been responding to assist another officer who was involved in the pursuit, he clearly exceeded the speed in which Chief Schermers had previously advised was too fast. It's my opinion that Officer Hirung was in violation of the memo issued by Chief Greg Schermers. I would recommend that Officer Richard Hirung receive an oral reprimand related to the conduct on July 28th, 2014, and that he, blank, speak to Officer Hirung regarding the conduct and counsel him on appropriate response to calls, specifically regarding speed. And I can tell you folks, everybody knows where I live. 807 1st Street Southeast, right adjacent to the hospital. And there are continuing, there was a little bit of slowing down of some of the squad cars going by my house for a small period of time when I posted on my blog that my cameras pick this stuff up. And I'm going to have a lot to share someday to expose a lot of things because my cameras are catching it, dates the time and everything. And now I know, and you know too, that the squad car video captures the speed that the squad cars are traveling at. So if anyone sees any squad car, whether it's a Morrison County Deputy Sheriff or a state trooper or a Little Falls police officer exceeding the speed limit in the city proper or anywhere in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone, if you call and make a complaint, they'll investigate it and they can prove how fast that officer was going.
Now, does this include lights and sirens? Or is this just somebody driving without lights and sirens at a lickety-split don't?
Well, the dash cam video would capture because you can hear the audio going on in the background.
Yeah, and I don't know how much difference that might make. I mean, the purpose of lights and sirens, of course, is to let people know who may be using the street at the same time that they better get out of the way. So if that would make a difference in how fast an officer is allowed to go, I'd be interested to know that.
I don't think law officers can violate the speed limit regardless.
Even in pursuit of
I think it's illegal. I could be wrong, but I believe that they cannot violate the speed limit. And otherwise, how could they have issued this infraction?
Right.
I was always told that. when I was a law enforcement wife.
Mhm.
Okay, here's another one, and this is from to the personnel file from Greg Schermers on Officer John West. It's dated 9/6/2013. On August 29th, 2013, I spoke with the following officers regarding alleged misconduct against Officer West, and there are 5 places where officers' names should have been listed that they're blanked out. It should be noted that I had also previously spoken with, so 5 officers came forward with complaints on Jonathan West.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting.
It should be noted that I had also previously spoken with, and then there's another name blocked out. On August 30th, 2013, I spoke with blank and Chief Adam Gunderson of the Royalton Police Department. On September 2nd, I spoke with, here's another name blocked out. On September 3rd, I spoke with another name blocked out. The allegations are as follows. Officer West has been late to work on several occasions, including the incidents on August 5th and August 19th, 2013. Officer West has at times been observed by fellow officers driving at high speeds to and from work. Chief Gunderson stated that on more than one occasion he had observed Officer John West traveling 10 to 15 miles over the posted speed limit in Royalton, because Jonathan West lives down by St. Cloud area somewhere.
Okay.
Officer West has at times signed on for his shift prior to arriving in the city, in the Little Falls city limits, when he's late for his shift.
So you signed that electronically?
I don't know, must, somehow.
Interesting.
Officer West on one occasion left the city to transport a deer from an accident scene to his father's residence, west of Little Falls, while he was on duty. Officer West returned to the office approximately 2.5 hours later. There were concerns expressed that Officer West is purposely attending his shifts so he can take overtime at a time when overtime is very tightly controlled. Remember that time?
Yeah,
When overtime was out of control in sound?
I know.
Before Dan Vogt got here?
Yeah.
Many allegations are non-specific as to time, date, and time. So there were other complaints besides whatever's listed here, folks. Action taken. On August 30th, 2013, I advised Officer West his canine vehicle will be left at the police department for 30 days starting on his first day back to work, which will be Friday, September 6th, 2013. I discussed each of the matters listed above with Officer West. This notice will serve as documentation of an oral reprimand signed by, it's either, I can't read it, it's either Chief Schermers or Kyle Johnson, but,
Scribble, yeah.
so there you have it, folks.
Interesting. So when he says that his canine unit will be kept at the police station, he has to drive his own personal vehicle. into
Right,
work.
because a lot of officers, and obviously he has been allowed to take his squad car to and from
Home.
to his home residence down in the St. Cloud area.
Got it.
So there you have it, and that's only a small portion of it. I've asked to get the information, trying to find out who's being pulled over and for what, and then correlating that with race. Somebody will get that information, and then
Well, actually, we have that information, but the race of the individuals is not given. We have a list of people who were pulled over for a 12-month period recently, but there's nothing on there that says what race they were. And of course, that was our first concern, was finding out whether racial profiling is going on, and whether more action is taken against drivers who are of people of color.
and sorry, folks, this is the mommy in me. If you're watching, officers, always let your conscience be your guide. Okay, now we're going to move on towards, we're
We've got
going
about
to
20 minutes left, by the way.
Oh, well, we have to speed
Yes, so
along here
maybe
then.
we need to.
Okay, this is the continuing of the 10 points program.
Oh, this is from the veterans.
March Forward, veterans and service members stand up against war and racism. It's called the 10-point program. And we left off a while back. Maybe you want to just read the highlights again and then start with number 5 because you didn't read from there, but read all the 10 points.
Okay. So these points were put together by veterans who have experience with these things. And number 1 of the 10-point program is we demand the right to refuse illegal and immoral orders. Service members should no longer be bound to carry out the plans of the Pentagon and Wall Street in violation of U.S. law, international law, and people's right to self-determination. I'm sorry, I was just going to read the title. 2, we demand an immediate end to the criminal occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan. And of course, if this were more current, there would be other countries listed. We demand an end to the existing officer corps. These are some serious demands being made. We demand adequate funding for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And now veterans should have full access to quality health care. Services should be drastically expanded to meet the real physical and mental health needs of veterans and their families. Independent medical investigation should be initiated to research the effects of potentially harmful experimental drugs and chemical, biological, and nuclear agents to which service members have been exposed. Any service member who has served in a combat theater should automatically receive lifetime compensation from the VA for being forced to suffer or inflict physical and or psychological harm in advancing the interests of the U.S. corporations. We really don't know what goes on in combat situations. Even people who are not placed in the very thick of the worst of combat situations can end up having an accumulation of stress from even lesser services. And I'm sorry, I have an issue with Veterans Affairs and Veterans Benefits. We keep seeing commercials, and lately by the Oakland Boys or Oak Street Boys or whoever they are, asking for citizens to help the American Legion help veterans. The American Legion is not a military arm. It's not funded by the military. It's a private organization of veterans. And the American Legion should not have the responsibility to take care of the shattered lives that the military just drops like garbage as people get used up in their service. Neither should the citizens of the United States have to charitably extend help to veterans and their families from our own pockets. The military already gets way more than half of the tax dollars you pay.
Right.
Why aren't they using some of that to make sure that veterans are not left in the lurch, physically, psychologically, financially, after their service to our country? I feel very strongly about that. Number 6, we demand the right to a job, housing, health care, and education for all. Service members are lured into the military with the hopes of escaping economic hardship as a civilian, and that's happening more now than it ever has before, and to obtain education benefits and job training. Yet thousands of service members must remain in the military, literally trapped due to the lack of opportunities in the civilian world. No service member should have to choose between military service and poverty. Housing, a job, and access to free quality education and job training should be a right for everyone. Number 7, we demand the immediate end to all military aid to governments in service of U.S. imperialism. U.S. domination is not only exercised through direct military involvement, but also through a myriad of brutal client regimes and comprador governments, I've never heard that term, that are funded, supported, and directed by the U.S. government. Service members should not have to serve a military that uses billions of dollars in funds and weapons to prop up governments that are guilty of committing war crimes or repressing their citizens for the interests of the Pentagon and Wall Street. We touched on this in a program we did recently with Larry Fisk and Doug Olson. They were talking about Latin America and how the U.S. Supports some regimes and vilifies others according to United States agenda, not according to what's actually going on there. I lost my place. Aid to such countries as Israel, Colombia, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, South Korea, Uganda, and Egypt should be immediately cut off. All remaining funds, military equipment, and weapons should be repossessed. Reparations should be paid to the populations that the military aid was used to repress. Shall I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, we demand the immediate dismantling of the permanent military-industrial complex. And of course, that's a term we've been hearing since Eisenhower. As long as there is a system in place that allows U.S. corporations to reap massive profits from going to war, there will be war for profit. The domination of the military-industrial complex has caused the death of tens of thousands of service personnel and millions of innocent people, all in the name of profit. All private military corporations should be shut down or nationalized. The more than $1 trillion a year that feeds the Pentagon and the military-industrial complex should be used to meet people's needs. Number 9, we demand that all those involved in pursuing war for profit be indicted. To ensure that service personnel no longer have to fight for the interests of the rich, all those responsible must be held accountable. Politicians, policymakers, lobbyists, CEOs, and others involved in pursuing warfare, both military and economic, as a means to reap profit, should be indicted for war crimes. Media outlets involved in disseminating false information in support of these plans should also be held accountable. Number 10, we demand full reparations paid with interest to all victims of the U.S. military. As service members in the U.S. military, we have been told that our enemy is the poor and oppressed abroad. But they are not our enemies. To begin to undo the injustices in which we have been forced to take part, the U.S. government should pay for the rebuilding of every structure bombed, compensating families for every person killed, and providing a lifetime of health care and disability benefits for every individual wounded, including resistance fighters who took up arms against the U.S. military.
You're here, moving right along. How many minutes do we have
Well, we
left?
got 13 minutes and
Oh,
47
good.
seconds.
I'm going to get right on to this. Camp Ripley's going to love us now. This is a study. U.S. Army officers lie routinely. It's written by Jeremy Diamond of CNN. I'll go as quickly as I can. It's very important. Okay. Washington CNN. U.S. Armies often resort to evasion and deception, and everyone at the Pentagon knows it. According to a new study conducted by the U.S. Army War College, in other words, in the routine performance of their duties as leaders and commanders, U.S. Army officers lie, reads the study, which was conducted by the War College's Strategic Studies Institute. The 33-page report, compiled following interviews with officers across the Army, concluded that the Army's culture is rife with dishonesty and deception at all levels of the institution, from the major junior members to senior Army officials. The study results come after the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, who officially left his post Tuesday, had raised concerns over the ethics in the military. Rear Admiral John Kirby, the Pentagon's press secretary, said 2 weeks ago that Hagel was deeply troubled over a spate of ethics investigations in the military. I think he's generally concerned that there could be at some level a breakdown in ethical behavior and in the demonstration of moral courage, Kirby said of Hagel. The vast majority of our senior leaders are men and women who have earned the special trust and confidence afforded them by the American people. However, when senior leaders forfeit this trust through unprofessional, unethical, or morally questionable behavior, their actions have enormously negative effect on the profession, Hagel wrote. The study describes a culture where deceptive information is both accepted and commonplace, and where senior officers don't trust the information and data received, such as compliance with certain Army training requirements or forms outlining how a mission was carried out. But Army officers are faced with an increasing number of requirements and bureaucratic hoops, according to the study, and rather than work with a rigid military brass to reform a burdensome bureaucracy, officers will simply sidestep those requirements, lying on forms, and often rationalizing their answers. The result? Officers become ethically numb, explains the study, which was conducted by Leonard Wong, research professor at the Strategic Studies Institute and retired Army officer, and behavioral studies professor Stephen Garris, who held company and battalion command roles during his 25 years in the Army. Eventually, their signature and word becomes tools to maneuver through the Army bureaucracy rather than symbols of integrity and honesty, the researchers wrote. This desensitization dilutes the seriousness of an officer's word and allows what should be an ethical decision to fade into just another way the Army does business. The study also comes after a string of high-profile ethics scandals involving senior military leaderships in recent years, from a cheating scandal involving a nuclear missiles officer last year and still ongoing federal investigation into one of the biggest corruption affairs in the Navy's history.
And again, this is a perfect example of people's fantasies being swept away by the winds of the truth. We don't want you to know that. It's, you know, after World War II, the military was the godsend. It was sacrosanct. But it turns out that people are people everywhere. And where a law will serve better than the truth, where a lie will serve better than the truth, a lie is what's promoted.
And I think this is going to have to be our last topic for the day. It's another article titled, Psychologists Have Uncovered a Troubling Feature of People Who Seem Nice All the Time.
Oh my.
In 1961, curious about a person's willingness to obey an authority figure, social psychologist Stanley Milgram began trials on his now famous experiment. In it, he tested how far a subject would go electronically, shocking a stranger, actually an actor faking the pain, simply because they were following orders. Some subjects, Milgram found, would follow directives until the person was dead.
Oh my gosh.
The news, a new Milgram-like experiment published this month in the Journal of Personality, has taken this idea to the next step by trying to understand which kinds of people are more or less likely or willing to obey these kinds of orders. What researchers discovered was surprising. Those who are described as agreeable, conscientious personalities are more likely to follow orders and deliver electric shocks that they believe can harm innocent people, while more contrarian, less agreeable personalities are more likely to refuse to hurt others. For an 8-month period, the researchers interviewed the study participants to gauge their social personality, as well as their personal history and political leanings. When they matched this data to the participants' behavior during the experiment, a distinct pattern emerged. People who were normally friendly followed orders because they didn't want to upset others, while those who were described as unfriendly stuck up for themselves. The irony is that a personality disposition normally seen as antisocial, disagreeableness, may actually be linked to pro-social behavior, writes Psychologies Today Kenneth Worthy. This connection seems to arise from a willingness to sacrifice one's popularity a bit to act in a moral and just way toward other people, animals, or the environment at large. Popularity in the end may be more of a sign of social graces and perhaps a desire to fit in than any kind of moral superiority. The study also found that people holding left-wing political views were less willing to hurt others. One particular group held steady and refused destructive orders. Women who had previously participated in rebellious political activism, such as strikes or occupying a factory. The Nazi effect. The findings led themselves even further to Milgram's original goal in the 60s, trying to understand the rise of Nazism.